welcome back to episode 3 of Get Busy Living. Today we're going to do a deep dive into my blog. You can find my blog at dancingwithmets.blogspot.com. During the first year of my diagnosis, writing really helped me cope. It helped me express my feelings during that time. And wow, visiting my blog, I hadn't gone back and read my initial writings from 2016 in quite some time. And visiting that was a walk down memory lane. It's crazy how I had forgotten some of the things that I didn't think I would ever forget. Being lonely and sad. I was really lonely and sad, especially those first few months, and I've kind of forgotten about that until I went back and read my blog and those feelings came back. So I'm just going to do a visit through some of my blog posts. I'm going to read some of my writings and just chat about how that helped me and how much I've grown in my faith, grown as a person, grown in my values since that initial diagnosis of stage 4 back in 2016. My first blog post was November 26th of 2016, and during that time I wrote about my tears, my anxiety, the sleepless nights, the long days of waiting for insurance approval. On December 5th, just a few weeks later, I wrote about gratitude and the things I was thankful at that time. And while reading that, what a reflection that was. What a reflection it was to read about how I was thankful for my loving family, my friends that cared so deeply about me, the community, and the strangers that reached out to my family, my loving church that prays with me and for me, the meals that we had gotten, my medical team. And I thought, wow, at that time, I didn't think I'd be here an additional 8 years later, still having so many things to be grateful for. On December 15th, I wrote about accepting. And in the second paragraph of that blog, I wrote, "The last few weeks of my life have been consumed with working on a plan and putting that plan into action and all the energy that goes with that. Now that the plan is in place, I have more time to think about the reality of stage 4 cancer. I can't help but find my mind wandering at certain moments, wondering how many of these moments I will get to enjoy. Last week, Jeff and I sat through 4 basketball games between our 2 kids. I couldn't help but think, I hope I'm still here in 5 years, sitting in these bleachers. As I Christmas shopped during that time, I would think about buying gifts that have meaning and purpose, buying something that my loved ones would remember me by. I wanted to write my children letters in case I wasn't here for huge milestones in their life, to tell them in person how proud I was of them. I would think about the gifts I wanted to buy them for special days that I may not live long enough to experience with them. It might sound strange to some, but that was what was on my mind during those times." I think that that's probably common for anybody with cancer, especially normal for somebody facing stage 4 cancer. I realize that none of us know how much time we have here, but knowing that you have cells living in your body working against you to kill you really makes you think about life. I vowed to myself during that time I would do my best to stay strong, to not let cancer bring me down, and to not rob me of any more time than I already had. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't have sad moments. On December 29th, just a month after my diagnosis, 21 days into my oral chemotherapy regimen, we had family pictures taken. And I remember thinking at that time, will this be our last family picture? Thank goodness it wasn't, because my son's hair was hideous in that family picture. We've had several family pictures since then, thank goodness. On January 23rd, 2017, I wrote about how blessed I was It was 60 days past my diagnosis. And I wrote, as the Christmas season came and went and 2017 started, the meals, love, and support continue to flood us. We're so grateful for that. However, life has settled back in and the kids have returned to school, and I started to slip into a dark place. I tried my best to hide it from my family and my friends. I tried to hide the sadness and the fear that was filling my soul. I put a smile on my face. I went to work, games, just as anybody would expect me to. But inside, I felt as though I was dying. The sermon series at church that month was on surrender. And I learned during that time, each day I needed to surrender. I'd surrender all my fears to God and have enough strength to get through the day. I used to find so much peace in being alone. I would long for my kids' bedtime when they were little, so I could have that hour alone before I went to bed. But suddenly, during that time, being alone was so scary for me. It gave me time to think, and it made my mind run wild, full of fear, sleepless nights, and so much anxiety. All I could do was what I knew how to do, and that was to keep praying and keep surrendering those fears. On March 3rd, 2017, I wrote about how I was finding balance. I had successfully completed my first 3 months of my oral chemotherapy. I had lots of fatigue and nausea, but nothing that would stop me from living. I was able to get through my days. I had had my first 3-month scan, and it had appeared that my cancer was stable and some of my tumors were even shrinking. That was great news. Moving forward, I would continue on the same treatment. During those first 3 months, I was privileged to meet the members of the Christian band Big Daddy Weave. I had them pray over me, which was amazing. I was able to help surprise a bestie with a surprise trip to Vegas to celebrate her 40th birthday. I jumped 850 feet off the stratosphere and was planning our first family vacation since diagnosis. I was finding balance in life and learning to live through treatment while enjoying life. On April 26th, I wrote about hot flashes, mutations, chemo, appointments, and vacations. It was already the end of April. I had been diagnosed in November. I was about to start my 6th month of chemotherapy. I was tolerating my treatments well. Hot flashes from the instant menopause were grueling and keeping me up at night, but I could live with that. I had recently been to the Bahamas. I was still working full-time, and I was grateful for each day. Yet I was still feeling lonely, finding myself lonely. Cancer's lonely. Stage 4 cancer is very lonely. I wrote, I realize we're all dying, and any one of us can be taken from earth at any time. All of us truly only have this moment. But those moments seemed even more precious, knowing that I was living with terminal cancer. I hadn't taught my kids everything they needed to know yet. I still had my own bucket list of things I wanted to do. I wanted to learn how to sew. I wanted to become a good cook. I wanted to travel the world. I wanted to see a volcano, a glacier. I wanted to climb a mountain. I needed to get busy living with cancer, yet I needed to prepare for my future, the future for my children that I might not be in. I also wanted to live in the moment, live in the present, and cherish those moments with the people that I love. I was struggling to find how to do that and get cancer off of my mind. How long will I feel well? How long do I have to complete this bucket list? How long before my cancer outsmarts my treatment? It was exhausting, and I kept telling myself, Chris, keep surrendering that to the Lord. 10 months into my diagnosis, I had done so much. I had met other lifers, stage 4 people with breast cancer, living life over cancer just like me. One of them for over 17 years. Some with tiny children, just babies. Some that I would meet and they'd pass away months later. In those 10 months, I checked many things off my bucket list. I jumped 10,000 feet out of a perfectly good airplane, free falling at 125 miles per hour. That was the most incredible thrill. Took my trip to New York City, watched another football season and a basketball season for my daughter. Life was pretty good. Then we hit the 1 year mark. I was 365 days from that official phone call that I had stage 4 cancer. I wrote on November 25th, 2017, in the last 365 days, I've gone into medical menopause, gained 25 unwanted pounds, swallowed $120,000 worth of oral chemotherapy, traveled to the Caribbean twice, visited New York City and Las Vegas, had amazing conversations with my children, jumped out of the stratosphere and out of an airplane. I've turned 40 and I've truly enjoyed each days of my life. I've made friends with many other stage 4 cancer patients. I've watched this terrible disease take the life of some of my friends. Some days I find so much joy in how great the last 365 days have been, and the other days I struggle thinking I am a year into this 3 to 5 year lifespan that I statistically have to live. I don't know how long I'll continue to feel well and not suffer from debilitating side effects of cancer, so at this time I'm going to continue to travel, explore, and check things off my bucket list. I'm due for a scan anytime, but I decided I wanted to enjoy the holidays without anxiety and end 2017 knowing that I'm stable. I'll schedule a scan for early January. Today, life is good. On January 12th, I wrote about choosing joy, how cancer can do funny things to our minds, makes you aware of every ache and pain, terrifying you that cancer could be growing, makes you think about the special gifts that you have in life, makes you laugh at the little things that you used to think were big problems. That was the day I learned that my cancer was still stable. After 13 months, my oral chemotherapy was doing its job. My cancer was unchanged, no new growth. That day, I chose joy. Joyful I was stable. Joyful Ibrance and Faslodex were doing its job. Joyful that I still felt good enough to work, travel, have fun, and be a mom. January 28th, 2019. I wrote about being intentional. It had been 2 years since my breast cancer diagnosis. The first year was filled with surgeries, doctor's appointments, side effects, adjusting to all the new normals, and trying to fit everything into the bucket list. I honestly felt like I had to live and I had to hurry to do those things. During the second year, I had decided to slow down some, reflect more, journal, find my purpose. During that time, I still checked things off my bucket list, and I still believed in get busy living, but I also believed in just enjoying slowing down, hiking, kayaking, enjoying pure Michigan. On December 30th of 2020, I wrote about living on borrowed time, and it was really interesting to read that. I guess sometimes when you write things and years go by, you have to reread them and relearn from them. Living on borrowed time. It's a phrase my husband and I joke about frequently. Some may call it sick humor. In reality, I'm 4 years into this 2 to 5 year lifespan of mine. It's been 4 years with stable scans and no new growth. I considered myself blessed that Ibrance was still working. On Monday, I had my last scan of 2020, and I'm blessed to celebrate stable. Stable used to make me sad because I wanted my cancer to shrink. And trust me, I still want it to shrink. However, I've lost so many friends over time that I've met along my journey that I now know that being stable is good news, almost like winning the lottery in cancer. 2020 brought us challenges and devastation. I always try to focus on the good that comes out of situations. For me, 2020 slowed life down. We're definitely the family that was overbooked and always on the go. As one of my favorite people would say, we're always trying to shove 10 pounds of shit into a 5-pound bag. I've learned a lot about myself in 2020. I learned what slowing down can do for me physically, how much better I can feel with proper rest and exercise, how important taking time for myself truly is. I stopped working my full-time career with Blue Sky Vision in October of 2020. Instead of waking up to emails, I now wake up and pray, sit in the hot tub, and do yoga. The amount of energy and peace that it brought me was incredible. To quit working was a tough decision. I always thought if I stopped working, I was letting cancer win. I prayed daily for months regarding the direction I should go. Then one day I realized cancer wasn't winning if I stopped working. I was winning. I finally decided who gets to get my energy for the day. I rode my bike countless miles since then, read books, sewed gifts, cooked meals, and cleaned out many closets. I no longer had to rely on my family to help me out around the house as much because I had the extra energy to do things. Each day when I would get out of work, I'd nap because I was exhausted. I think I've taken 2 naps since I stopped working. I truly believe I'm helping my quality of life by extending my life. It was time to slow down and take care of myself. I'm so blessed to have the opportunity and so thankful for the support I had from my family. It's interesting going back and reading that, and that was in December of 2020. I stopped working in October of 2020. And how refreshed I realized I felt at that time because I had time back and wasn't consumed with work. And time went by, my cancer was stable for a number of years, and for some crazy reason, I decided I would go back to work. And so it was interesting to go back and read that blog entry and read how well I felt not working. In May of 2021, I wrote about how we knew this day would come. How after 4.5 years of being on my first line treatment, the day came that it stopped working. I was blessed to have lived life over cancer for 4.5 years with minimal side effects. During a routine scan, it was discovered that my breast cancer in the lining of my right lung was growing. There was good news, the good news that it hadn't spread anywhere else. What that meant for us was that I would stop receiving the treatment I had been on for 4.5 years, and I would start a new treatment. I wrote about how the hardest part of that was telling my kids. Bryce was halfway through college, living on his own, working hard at being a young adult. Brooke was just finishing up her junior year in high school, thriving as a student, and I had to drop the bomb to them that the cancer was growing again. My prayer for them during these hard times was to turn to the Lord, that they would ask the Lord to lift them up and to carry their burdens, that they would know that His plan was bigger than any of ours. In October of 21, it had been a while since my last update. I learned that as I don't know if the word is comfortable, got more comfortable with cancer, as my anxiety went down, as I surrendered more to the Lord and He took the burdens from me, I wrote less. But in October of 21, I made a post about Get Busy Living. And I wrote about how we traveled to California with dear friends, visited Lake Tahoe, hiked some of Yosemite National Park, wineries in Napa Valley, drove the coastline, and went to San Francisco. It was definitely a bucket trip for me, and my friends made it possible. On October 26, 2022, I wrote about living 6 weeks at a time. I had wrote about how it had been 1 year since I started clinical trials, that every 6 weeks for the last year I had had a CT scan. Yesterday, as I laid in the CT machine, I said to the technician, the results from the next 5 minutes determines my path for the next 6 weeks. I am so grateful to qualify for clinical trials, but at the same time, they're a lot of work. With trials, you're monitored very closely and often. In the past 2 months, I had had 22 doctor's appointments and a surgery. That definitely puts a crimp in your Get Busy Living routine. But here I am. I continue to qualify for ever-changing clinical trials in the science world. The results of my scan showed that my treatment was working. A few of the tumors had shrunk in just 6 short weeks, and there was no new growth. Qualifying for a clinical trial when you have cancer is definitely like winning the lottery in the life of the cancer world. So for the next 6 weeks, I would continue to receive chemotherapy every other week, and then we'd scan again. October of 2023, a year later, I wrote about chemo breakups and how hard they are. All breakups are hard, right? But especially chemo breakups. For the last year, every other week, I'd had an infusion of chemotherapy, a trial that targets only the bad cells and tries to protect the good cells. It was a great treatment that allowed me to live pretty normally during treatment. The bad news was the cancer had outsmarted the treatment and began to grow more. Still only in the same area. As science evolves, I've had several treatment options. We've been really happy with the success from the clinical trials I wrote. Next week, I'll be starting another oral chemotherapy made by Pfizer. We're excited it's an oral treatment that means less trips to Grand Rapids, and we're praying it does its job for a long time. I wrote we're in full empty nester mode and really enjoy our time together. Since I'm feeling so good and I've been doing well for so long, I decided to go back to work. I'm working remotely for a vision service plan as a credentialing analysis. I'm really enjoying a daily routine, something other than cancer to focus on, and contributing to the household income again. The job is flexible and allows me to continue my get busy living. We have 3 trips planned for the winter and a super big summer trip planned for our 25th anniversary. November 11th, 2024, I wrote about hills and valleys. We all walk through hills and valleys, or good times and bad times. In August, I was blessed to go on an Alaskan cruise with my husband and good friends, celebrating our 25th wedding anniversary. While hiking up the hill to see the beauty of the waters below us, I had to stop and take a break. I mentioned to my friend Amy that I felt more labored in my breathing than normal. We rested for a moment and then went about our hike. We got to the top and enjoyed the beauty of the scenery and the Alaskan waters. It was breathtaking, and I was truly out of breath. We continued on with our day, enjoying the trip. As we returned home from our amazing trip, I started to feel labored breathing as I walked up and down stairs, and slowly over time it continued to get worse. While in Alabama on my annual trip down south with my snowbird friend Michelle to drop her off in Florida, we went for a short walk, less than 1 mile. I was so winded during that walk I could barely walk and talk at the same time. From that day the symptoms got worse pretty quickly, and I landed myself in a Florida hospital for 3 nights while we tried to figure out what was wrong. Fluid in my lungs is all we really knew. Jeff flew down to be by my side. I received IV antibiotics to treat should it be pneumonia, and was then released to fly home where I could see my medical team. A day later, a CT scan confirmed that I had fluid in my right lung, likely to be malignant, and also had signs of new breast cancer growth in both my right and left lung. My amazing oncologist called me within 20 minutes of my scan to schedule me for a thoracentesis to have the fluid removed from my lung. He started searching for new clinical trials for me to start, and it was crazy how during the 4 days between my CT scan and thoracentesis procedure, how difficult breathing got. Walking to the bathroom, showering, made me feel like I had just gone for a run. Moments following the thoracentesis, I immediately began to feel relief. Was able to take deep breaths, walk again without having to catch my breath, and as the days followed on, I continued to feel more and more like my usual self. This week is filled with 4 doctor's appointments and the start of a new oral chemotherapy. I'm so blessed to continue to qualify for clinical trials and have such an amazing care team. Luckily, I wasn't in the valley for very long and am starting to trek back up the hill. Confident the treatment will get me back to the top. God's got this. As always, so thankful for my medical team, science, my family and friends, my church, life group, and all the people praying for me. The prayers are working. Don't take one day for granted. If you're healthy enough to do the things, do them. Go for the walk, run, or bike ride. Visit your parents and grandparents. Check items off your bucket list, because one day you won't be able to do those things anymore. A few weeks later, on December 18th, 2024, I wrote about the Christmas present I didn't ask for. Greetings. A little update from my world. I received a Christmas gift this year that I didn't really want. As many of you recall, early November, I had cancer fluid removed from my lung. It returned pretty quickly, so this week I had a fancy Pleural X catheter placed so I can drain my lung at home. Visiting nurses are making a few visits this week so that we know we're draining correctly, and then we'll be on our own. This is good news. The good news is, being able to remove the fluid from home allows me to have better days. I can breathe and feel better. The goal is to hopefully only have this extra piece of equipment attached for a period of time and then remove so we continue to get busy living and do all the things that we enjoy. We need my lung to open up and work correctly without retaining fluid so that the new chemotherapy can start working. Not long after that, January 28th, 2025, I wrote about changes. I wrote, sometimes I don't know where to begin. The last few months have been a whirlwind of testing, results good and bad, surgeries, and creating a new plan, also by trying to live and not just exist here on earth. I've always tried to not allow cancer to define me. I have tried to get busy living and learn to live life over cancer and share my story. If I can help someone else live life over cancer, teach someone to find joy in the days, to love our God and to trust in Him, to donate to research that's keeping me alive, or just stop and enjoy the little things, then I've done my job with sharing my story. I wrote about how treatments are like a playbook in sports. In sports, the talent spreads among athletes on a team and allows for more options in the playbook. For me, having estrogen, progesterone, and HER2 protein allows for me to have the most treatments in my medical playbook. Having almost 4 years success in clinical trials also saves a lot of FDA drugs for me to try. My team and I decided I would go back to an FDA-approved drug called Enhertu. Enhertu is a newer drug designed for ER, PR, and HER2 positive patients. It does come with side effects. However, I had my first treatment yesterday and all is well so far. We'll continue to move forward, trust in God's plan, and continue to get busy living. That was my last blog post. Today I'm having my 6th treatment of Enhertu. So far it's working and doing its job. So I encourage you to go back and read my blogs. As I mentioned before, you can find that at dancingwithmets.blogspot.com. And you'll just see, you'll watch and see how in the early days things were really hard. They were really sad. I had a lot of dark days. And as time went on, my faith just grew, and I learned how to live with cancer, and I learned how to surrender things to the Lord. And I can honestly say I don't have very many dark and sad days anymore. I'm not anxious. I'm just here busy living. I've chosen, I don't want to be sad. That all of our years can be short, and I don't want to spend that time sad. Sneak peek into the future blog. Over the next 3 months, I have some different people coming on. I'm going to bring in 2 of my cancer friends, and we're going to talk about life living with cancer, side effects, anxiety. I'm going to bring on my mom, who's going to talk about her life as a child with a mom that had cancer. We're going to talk about genetics, and she's going to talk about what it's been like having a daughter with cancer. And I'm going to bring on a couple of my best friends, and we're going to talk about faith and prayer, and we're going to talk about things I've learned from them and things that they've learned from me over the years. So, thank you.